The challenges one would face when we are trying to convince, retail customers to adopt this technology, and also have hotels and airlines to adopt these technologies. Is there an issue in terms of jurisdiction?
I would say there are two distinct problems. So one which you mentioned, that from a perception perspective, when you start talking about Web3, when you start talking about blockchain, everybody relates it to cryptocurrencies. The volatility of cryptocurrencies is quite known. Cases like FTX kind of give it a bad rap. So one thing that's very important, and which we engage a lot in, is in educating people that Web3 cryptocurrencies is one of the applications of Web3, and anything else, for example, what we are doing in form of NFTs and hotel room bookings, it's a completely different application. They are not necessarily related. You could be buying an NFT using your credit card, and it would not be a cryptocurrency of any form. And therefore, from a jurisdiction perspective, say from the perspective of governments who are really concerned about, say, AML kind of risks that are there, none of that will come into picture.
AML is anti-money laundering.
Anti-money laundering, right? So the non-cryptocurrency use cases of the blockchain have nothing to do with some of these dangerous, problems that we come to hear of. The other part here is that there is a huge amount of infrastructure that is getting built today on the Web3 layer. So we are, to be honest, we are in the where the internet was in the late 1990s. That is where we are. In fact, the current market slump is very similar to the dot-com bust that happened. So all this infrastructure that is being created, it will help normal people to not really think about Web3. They can actually come and buy a hotel room, get an NFT without really understanding that they have interacted with the blockchain.
So you're saying the technology is being built in front of us, and we are where the internet was perhaps in 1995, when we had those dial-up modems. वो phone चला तो internet बंद, internet चला तो phone बंद. That sort of system, right? And very, very slow connections, and probably some of the same concerns
and
that
the
people
simile is
had.
quite apt. The blockchain is quite slow today, and again, there is a lot of innovation happening there. So Polygon, which is Polygon Ventures, is also one of our investors, and Polygon is one of the blockchain solutions that's specifically working on this problem of speeding up the blockchain. So we are actually in that 256 kbps or maybe 56 kbps world of the blockchain, but very soon, and thankfully Web3 is moving much faster. So maybe in another year or so, you will see the 2 Mbps or the 4 Mbps, 10 Mbps lines coming up.
So that's what I mean. If you think, even just 15 odd years ago, before Flipkart and all these guys came in, people were scared to transact online and put their credit card online. They were like, okay, maybe I'll do it for a train ticket or a plane ticket, because in the early 2000s you had your Make My Trips that came along. So that's an unemotional purchase, right? You don't need to see, touch, feel your air ticket or your train ticket. But anything that needs to be physically felt, shoes, clothes, everything, people were like, I'm not going to put in case there's a fraud. And what we've seen in the pandemic especially is that everything from our groceries to everything we buy is just done online. So you're saying there's a learning curve with this, and there's a certain adoption curve with this as well. So while this is new, the technology is being built, mistakes are being made, projects are crashing. But this also happened 20 odd years ago with the dot-com boom and bust. In 99, 2000, you had lots of projects that came and went. But then you had Amazon that came out of it, and Facebook that came out of it, and Google that came out of it. So the whole space moved forward. So this is the natural evolution of any emerging technology, that you're going to have sometimes a lot of unscrupulous actors as well. But that's just par for course, because then eventually the technology moves forward and these bad actors are kind of like,
Absolutely.
relegated to the background.
And in fact, some of these changes, so especially for a country like India, some of these changes have happened recently. You had UPI coming in. In the last 5 years, UPI has simply become an indispensable tool. Now, the good part is that the Web3 world in India is taking advantage of all these things. So today, technically, you can buy a digital art NFT by paying money via UPI. There are these technologies available even today. So some of these gallops that India has made in technology are helping us get onto this Web3 bandwagon very fast. In fact, a very good part is that as far as Web3 developers are concerned, India has the largest number of Web3 developers across the globe. We have more Web3 developers in this country than the United States. So we are really on the forefront of of this particular revolution, and I think this is one revolution that we should really capitalize on, because this can help us get to the $5 trillion economy maybe. That's the aspiration all of us are chasing.
You know, another term that's entered our lexicon recently is metaverse. Everybody must have heard of metaverse, right? In fact, I've written an article on the metaverse in this month's Vistara magazine. So if any of you guys are traveling via Vistara, do check it out. There's a whole 3 or 4 page spread on the metaverse and the different use cases in various industries. Now, one of the things that metaverse is obviously, not confused with, but kind of like related to, is having a VR headset or AR technology. But I'd argue that, at shows like these, travel and tourism boards are already having a VR headset where you can maybe feel like you're walking on a street in Paris, or you're at some museum in Italy. So is that what the metaverse is, or there's a lot more to the metaverse than just maybe wearing a VR headset? And nobody wants to do that for more than 10-15 minutes because it gives me a headache.
Right. So I would actually say we are in, just like there was a Web 1, we are in Metaverse 1, which is exactly what you mentioned. There's a VR headset which I am wearing, and I'm just consuming some passive content which has been prepared by somebody else. So we will very soon enter the Metaverse 2, wherein you are both the consumer and the creator of that content, which is what I was mentioning, that you go on a holiday, you record those moments, maybe in your camera, you take a couple of videos on your phone, which you anyways today do, and that can be fed into some of these metaverse things, and you can come back from that holiday and put on your VR headset, and you can experience the holiday all over again. Rather than just flipping through the photos, you would actually be living those moments again. So you would both own as well as you would create and consume that content. So that's what we are gunning for. And probably, think about things like, if you share it with your friends, even though your friend was not there with you for the holiday, they could also enjoy the holiday along with you. They could also have the same experience, and it could lead to a completely different way of how we enjoy what we do when we travel.
So can metaverse democratize travel as well? For example, not everyone can afford to take a European holiday, or someone who's a senior citizen who may not be able to travel, but maybe can just sit in his or her room and experience what it's like to be on Oxford Street, or maybe take a bit of a roller coaster ride at Disneyland.
Exactly.
Are some of those things
Definitely. And as I said, that
the hardware needs to be better, right?
The hardware needs to be better, and I think it will get better over a period of time. You could see VR capabilities, just like we have smart TVs today. You could have VR TVs coming up. So that's definitely something on the cards. Just one more plug I want to make is that all this also needs NFTs to be around, because only when your booking is an NFT, only when your travel ticket is an NFT, that is when you can link these things. That is when you can start owning these experiences. So that ownership element comes from that NFT bit, and therefore NFT is very integral to the success of metaverse and travel also.
Yeah, there's also Millennium Hotels, which is a Singapore-based hotel. They're in New York, they're in Auckland, they're in Paris. They've done something very interesting. So they have a digital twin in the metaverse, and everyone's experimenting with this, right? So you can actually go in and experience the hotel in the metaverse. And I think, like, if you finish a tour of the hotel, you get an NFT, or you get a POAP, or and you get some real world benefits in the actual hotel. So these are some of the areas where hotels are also experimenting, where they want to find new ways to engage with their audience. And so that's one of them. And Qatar Airways, I think, also has now, it's called Qverse, where you can experience their first class cabin and first class lounge in the metaverse. So if you Google Qverse, maybe there'll be a digital avatar that kind of takes you through the first class lounge in Qatar Airways.
So you mentioned the term POAP, that stands for Proof of Participation. So imagine
proof of attendance.
Attendance and yeah. So imagine, I was able to give out 2 POAPs today, which unfortunately I cannot. But imagine I could give an NFT POAP to each one of the people sitting here, and I would tell them that if you hold this particular POAP, I would give you a $10 discount to book on our website. I mean, that would be cool.
What does a POAP look like? My understanding is that a POAP is like a digital version of a fridge magnet, right? So So we go to different countries. A lot of people collect like a fridge magnet from different countries, or they'll collect shot glasses, maybe with like the Eiffel Tower and those sort of kind of like